But you know, Time Magazine is owned by the same company that owns CNN, right? So you start to realize, why are certain people on CNN? Well, because they were just on Time Magazine and they want to sell more copies of the magazine. So it's a racket. But anyway, I was asked to be on Larry King with some other people who were on that list of 25 most influential evangelicals. And it was clear that of the 25, I was the one who none of them had ever heard of. So it was a big mistake that I was on that list. And a number of the people on the list have since said it was a really big mistake that I was included as an evangelical. So anyway, here we are. But tonight, I would really, I love this theme, to think about the future of faith. And I love the idea of it being interdisciplinary, because I think what we talk about tonight, all of the students here from a wide variety of majors, you're going to see some relevance to your field of work. And I really like the fact that tomorrow Dave Kinnaman is going to be here, because a lot of what I talk about tonight in some ways is a part of the solution to some of the problems that Dave is going to talk to you about tomorrow. And Dave has the real hard data to tell you about some real serious issues. And for all the folks who are older than students, if you understand what Dave says tomorrow, you'll be understanding the reality that the students are living in. And for those of you who are students, Dave has really, really important research on the attitudes toward faith from 16 to 29-year-olds. So when we think about the future of faith, it's the future of your faith. And so it's very, very important. We all woke up on the same planet this morning, and what a world we live in. I mean, we've lost over a third of the value of the U.S. stock market since last fall. Trillions of dollars of value have disappeared. And we've got a global financial crisis that nobody understands. I have a friend who was on the Obama transition team in economics. And it was maybe in December, or probably in December, when he was asked, how's it going on the transition team? He said, it's scary. He said, I'm in there with all these other economists. None of us know what's going on. We don't know if we're in the third inning or the eighth inning. And we're having to prepare for things that I never thought we'd prepare for in my lifetime. We're having talks about bread lines. We're having talks about riots for food. We're having really serious talks. So this is this world that we live in. We live in a world where how many of you have seen the movie Hotel Rwanda? Well, since Hotel Rwanda happened, we've had a genocide going on 4 times. The number of people who were killed in Rwanda have been killed in Congo. And everybody said about Rwanda, never again. It's happened again 4 times over. We've got hundreds of thousands of people dead, a couple million people at risk in Darfur. It's kind of up there at the bottom of the sandy part of Africa. We've got amazing problems and challenges facing us. And I know that among some Christians, you're not allowed to talk about global warming because it's seen as a political subject. Well, look, folks, everything's a political subject. And whether you believe in global warming or not, it's happening. I mean, the temperature's going up. You can debate different things, but changes are happening. A couple of weeks ago, a piece of the Antarctic ice sheet the size of Jamaica broke off. I mean, this stuff's happening. For the last couple of years in the summer, you could travel around the north of Canada in open water, something haven't been able to do in recorded history. A lot of things are going on in this planet. And when we think about the future of faith, we can't just think about what happens in our church buildings. We've got to think about what happens on this planet. And I'd like us to think about a faith tonight that is very much a worldly faith in the sense that it's involved in this world. And what I'd like to talk to you about tonight actually goes way, way back. Roger mentioned the austere age. I'm getting down to break our cover, but we were both born in 1956. 1956. And When I was in my 20s, in the 1970s, I was involved in youth work up into the early 80s in the summers. Later I became a college English teacher, and I would teach during the school year, and I worked in youth work in the summer at a youth camp. And we had about 125 high school and college students at this camp one summer. I was in the late 70s, maybe around 1980, 81, somewhere in there. And I was speaking this day, and do we have any people here involved with youth work in any way? Okay, a few. Okay, well, you youth workers, you know what I'm about to talk about. I was unprepared that day, okay? But we call this being led by the Spirit. And, so I had to speak, and I had a really good beginning. Like, I received inspiration for a good beginning, but the Holy Spirit hadn't given me the ending. So I was basically going to start and then hope that I got some idea of what to do next by the time I got to the place where my preparation ran out, okay? So I had a little, one of those white flip charts, and so I started off and I said to the kids, I said, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. I said, my first question is, what are the issues that people are really arguing about and talking about and energized about in your church? What are the issues in your church people are really struggling with and thinking about? So they thought for a minute, and a girl raised her hand. She says, oh, in my church, the big deal is, can you have guitars in worship? So we write guitars in worship. Somebody else says, oh, in my church, no problem with guitars. Issue in my church, can we have drums in worship? Somebody else says, in my church, we're having a big argument about creation versus evolution. Creation versus evolution. Somebody else says, oh, in my church, big argument about can women be preachers? So put women in preachers. And somebody else said, oh, in my church, the big deal is speaking in tongues. And everyone, let me see if I can remember any of the other ones. Somebody else said, oh, free will versus predestination. Put that one up there. So that we filled up the page with those issues, and I tore off the page, and we were in a barn, so there's like nails sticking out, like sticking up on the wall. And then I said to the students, okay, next question. When you are hanging out with your friends at school, and these were public school kids, right? So not church school, but public school. When you're hanging out with your friends from school, what are the issues you guys really talk about? What are the issues that you think about and have arguments about and are really energized about? And it took them a couple minutes, and people made a few jokes about zits and dates and stuff like that. But eventually, we got a little more serious, and somebody said, I'm really worried about overpopulation, and my friends and I talk about that sometimes. So I wrote overpopulation. And somebody else said, oh man, for me, it's nuclear weapons. So I wrote nuclear weapons. Somebody else said, I'm really concerned about racism. Somebody else said, I'm worried about starvation and famine and hunger. Starvation, famine, hunger. Somebody else said, I'm really worried about pollution. Put up pollution. Somebody else said, extinction of species. Extinction of species. Somebody else said, World War III. I'm worried about World War III. Put it that one. And there are a couple more things like this. I tore that one off. And then I put this one up on this wall over here. Now, that was as far as my preparation went. And at that point, I'm sort of waiting for a dove to descend and, insight to come to what to say next. So while I'm waiting and trying to figure out what to say next, I just look over at this list over here. And I look over at this list and I kind of just look back and forth. And I think the students thought, oh, he's being dramatic. Really, I was just killing time. And the students are sort of looking back. And something happened. I don't think it happened to everybody in the room, but I know it happened to a bunch of us because we talked about it later. This sort of chill went up our spine. And I don't think this is what I was planning to say, but this is what happened. We all realized that there was nothing in common between those two lists. And I remember getting this sort of sick feeling. The better job I do as a youth worker,